Okay, this one we want to solve in right interval notation. This problem is not written with a 0 anywhere on it. So before you begin, it's always best to set the whole thing equal to 0. So we're going to bring over the 6 and the 5x. I'm going to bring that across the inequality symbol and make them both negative. Now you could bring the square over this way, but eventually you're going to have to factor, and sometimes that negative out front might be more confusing. So that's why I'm going to take both of these and move them over to the left. So 6x squared, we get minus 5x minus 6. That's going to be less than 0. What you want to do now is, before you do that, either the table method or if you do the number line method, you want to make sure that that is in a factored form first. Okay, so that's what I want to do. I want to factor this one. Now, there's many different ways of factoring, and you can use whatever factoring method works best for you. I'm going to do this one by trial and error. If you do it by trial and error, that means that you look for two numbers that multiply to make 6, so we'll start out with that. I can do 2x and 3x. I want to get 6x squared, so I'll need an x for both of those. Now for the 6 on the end there, I can either do 1 and 6, or I can do 3 and 2, and I can just pick which one of those I want to use. Let's start with 3 and 2, and I may need to switch these depending on what we get. I want to get a negative 5 in the middle. So therefore I know that one number is going to have to be positive and the other number is going to have to be negative. Okay, so if I multiply 2x times 2, that's 4, and I get a 9 here. So it is possible to get a 5 if I have a 4 and I have a 9. I want to get negative 5, which means I need to make the 9, that one has to be negative, and this one's going to be positive. So now let's try it. 6x squared plus 4 minus 9, that does give us negative 5x. Negative 3 and positive 2 does give us negative 6. So yes, this is the correct way of factoring that one. And you might have gotten that same result by trying the grouping method or bottoms up method. Whatever method you want to use, that's fine. So now that we have it factored correctly, we're ready to do one of our two different methods. So let's do the table method first. Table method means you're going to set each of these individually equal to 0 to find out the spots, the numbers that are going to go on the table. And you have to do that anyway. Even if you're going to do number line method, you want to find out what numbers go on your number line too. So that's why you want to take both of these and set them equal to 0. If you take this one equal to 0, you're going to get x is equal to 3/2, and you're going to get x is equal to negative 2/3. So those are the two numbers that are going to go on your number line. To make your, if you're going to do it by the table method, what you do is you're going to put both your pieces, 2x minus 3 and 3x plus 2, you're going to put both of them down onto the table. Since we have two numbers, we're going to draw 1 and 2 lines here to represent each of these. You put the smaller number first, negative 2/3, and this is going to be 3/2. You want to add one more column beyond that last number. So whatever the last number is, 3/2, right here, you're going to just put one more line beyond it. So now we have our table is created, and we're ready now to put in test numbers. You want to know what that number is, so you know what you put in the correct test number. That's usually where I see the most mistakes made, is people will put the wrong test number in. If you put the wrong test number that doesn't belong to that section, you're not going to get the correct signs. So I have negative 2/3. Now negative 2/3, a number that would be smaller than that is I'm going to use a whole number. I'm going to try negative 1 or negative 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put negative 1. I'm going to circle it. That's going to end up being my test number I'm going to put in. Then I want to pick a test number in between these. I have a negative and a positive number, so I can always use 0. That's my test number next. A number beyond 3/2. 3/2 is the same thing as 1.5, so therefore I want to try a number bigger than that. I'm going to use 2. These test numbers go into this expression on the left-hand side, and you're going to indicate whether you get a plus or a minus on that. Negative 1 goes in here. Negative 2 minus 3 gives you a negative. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3, plus 2 still gives you a negative. Now I'm going to try 0. 0 goes into both of these. 2 times 0 minus 3 gives you a negative number. 3 times 0 plus 2 gives you a positive number. Then I'll try 2. 2 times 2 is 4 minus 3, that's a positive number. 3 times 2 plus 2, that gives you a positive number also. Don't forget, if you're going to do it by the table method, you want to make sure that you multiply down each of these columns. 2 negatives will give you a positive. Multiply these, we get a negative. Multiply these, we get a positive. This is your final sign configuration. So again, the way this works is whatever symbol that you see here, this is going to tell you whether you look for positive numbers or negative numbers. I have less than 0. So if I have less than 0, that means I'm looking for negative numbers. So any region where I have negatives, that's what I'm going to choose. Now I also know that the equal sign is not included there as well. So when I do my interval, I'm going to use parentheses. I don't want to include the actual endpoints. So from my chart here, it says that between negative 2/3 and 3/2, I'm going to get negative number as a result. That's what I want. I want to indicate what x values will give me a negative result, so that way it works with this equation. I have to get whatever I get from this has to be less than 0, has to be negative. So my answer is going to be from negative 2/3 to 3/2. And this will be my final answer. I'm using 2 parentheses for each one of those. Negative 2/3 to 3/2. That would be my final answer. I want to do the same exact process by using the number line method. So if I use number line method for this first, so again, this is a completely different process. It's kind of like starting the problem over again using a different process. If I'm going to do the number line method, I would still take these 2 values and put them on my number line. Again, the smaller number has to go first. Negative 2/3, 3/2 goes second. Now that I have this, I need to pick test numbers again. So test numbers would be the same ones I had before. And so I would pick -1, 0, and 2. The same way I kind of thought about what numbers to pick last time, I can do the same process to figure out what test numbers have to be here. Notice again, I'm writing these numbers down further and also circling them. So that way when I write my answer, I won't get confused and accidentally put -1 for my interval instead of this number. You're going to pick these test numbers and put them into the original one. So the question is, well, which one do I use? Do I use this one or I use that one? It actually will work for either one, but I recommend that you actually just use this one, the one that already has the 0 on one side. Go ahead and use that one because it's going to make it easier to see, because then all you're comparing is to see whether you get a positive or negative result. So use this one when you're doing that. Okay? So I'm going to put -1, so I want to test -1. Okay? If you want to use the factor version too, you can. So you can either use this one or that one. Makes no difference. Let's just use this one. So I have 6 times -1 squared minus 5 times -1, and then I have -6. I'm going to put this in here. I get 6 plus 5 minus 6. So 6. So basically you can think of it as this 6 will cancel out with that 6, and you still end up with a 5 left over. That's a positive number, so I'm going to put a positive right there for that first section on my number line. Next, I want to test 0. Okay, so 0 is going to go in here. I have 6, 0 squared minus 5 times 0 minus 6. I'm just using this equation right here. I get -6 as a result, which means that this is going to be negative on my number line. Then you want to test 2. Okay, so 2 is going to go into the same one again. So I have 6 times 2 squared minus 5 times 2 minus 6. All I'm concerned about is whether I get a positive number or a negative number. This is going to be 24 minus 10 minus 6. That's going to end up giving us, we don't even need to figure this out and get the exact number, because all we're concerned about is whether it's positive or negative. This result is going to give you a positive number. So therefore the ending region is going to be a plus. Number line method, sometimes you have to do a little bit more work when you plug the numbers in. However, you'll get exactly the same sign configuration across the top. You don't have to do any more work with it. You can get your answer directly off of this one, and once again, from that, your answer is going to be what we had up here. So this is just going to be the same result. You have a plus minus plus. You're looking for the region that's negative because originally we got a less than 0 there. And that's why we're looking for the region only where we have a minus sign on my number line chart. So you're only picking numbers between -2 and 3/2.